So about powdery mildew, one more question. You said once that fruit's set in its pea size, it's starting to turn green, you don't have to worry about powdery mildew at that point?
Correct.
Like if the rest of the panicle has some powdery mildew on
Don't
it,
worry about it.
that's not going to make that.
No, I've never had an issue. I stopped spraying at that point. Now, if the same tree has some part of it that's got open bloom still, you got to spray that open bloom. But you can skip the panicles that are, pretty much
So once
overwhelmingly.
it's just set.
Yeah. Once you see those little mangoes set and the flowers are pretty much all spent at that point, then there's really no reason to keep spraying to control the powdery mildew. Now, there may be still reason to spray to control anthracnose.
Right.
Because that's going to continue up until they're about that big. So,
But like if a panicle has, 20 little peas on it and they start dropping, that's just the tree shedding.
That's just the tree shedding its mangoes. It's not due to powdery mildew.
What about black spot? Is there anything?
Bacterial black spot? Yes, there is. Bacterial black spot's the hardest disease I've ever had to control. That you have to rotate multiple products. You have to practice what I call sanitation pruning. You have to remove any infected fruit, infected panicles, infected limbs. A lot of the products that treat anthracnose will treat bacterial black spot. The best resistance to bacterial black spot is to grow varieties that are resistant to it. And there's a pretty long list. Now, what we found is we're seeing less bacterial spot in the county than we used to see. Unfortunately, that's probably because a lot of the trees that were infected got removed. So Old Kents, Kits, Hatchers, Haydens that were infected with the disease got cut down. Happens a lot. We top worked a lot of the trees that we had that had bacterial black spot, and we top worked them into varieties that were resistant. Now, we will spray the ones that we have left. We will spray with multiple products to try to control the disease, and we get some effectiveness on the early ones. But the mid and late season mangoes, we don't have time to spray as they're approaching maturity, and they will typically still get it more years than not. So some years it's more severe than others. But if you are concerned about bacterial black spot, I would just suggest avoiding varieties that are prone to it. And if you have a variety that is prone in your yard and it's infected with the disease and you're losing fruit every single year, top work it into something else. So.
And my second question, which is just sort of with curiosity, I've noticed on Julie's when they drop, they don't just turn yellow and fall off. They love to turn like darker, brownish purple, sort of shrivel. Why is their drops just not falls on the ground like all the others? Like
why do some mangoes cling to their fruit is what you're asking?
Their drops are so distinctive looking.
Yeah, they do that. Dwarf Hawaiian does that because it's a Julie descendant, and Graham does that too. So why do they cling to their fruit? I don't have an explanation. There is probably a chemical explanation for why, like in terms of buildup of auxins or something like that causes that variety to cling.
They almost look like raisins. I mean, they're not as shriveled, but they're almost like, they don't have a disease. Yeah. They're just a drop that falls.
A couple other varieties will cling to their fruit too. Dot does it. Pina Colada does it. Dot's really bad about it. My suggestion though is to remove those. Don't leave them on the tree, because any fruit or panicle that's left on the tree, is only going to serve as a source of disease inoculum, and it's doing your tree no favor. So when you see spent panicles that are starting to brown or turn black, take them off. And if you see fruit that's clinging to the tree, take it off. There's no value in leaving it on. So like when I go around the farm and I'm just like on the phone or something, I'll take some of this stuff off as I'm walking around. And you can go into your yard daily or every few days or whatever and take off that material because it's not helping you. It's just serving as a source of anthracnose or bacterial spot or any other number of pathogens.
Can you prune at that time? Like as you're doing that, say people only have a few trees in their yard. They're small. The panicle didn't produce. Can you just go ahead and prune back at that time? Or would you wait to start pruning until after all of the fruit is off the tree?
You can, but they don't always respond to the pruning. So sometimes you'll cut them while they have fruit on them and they'll spring out a bunch of growth from where you made the cut. But a lot of other times, and it could be variety dependent as well, You make that cut when they're carrying fruit or maturing fruit, and they don't want to do anything other than mature that fruit.
Got it.
There's no harm in doing it, except if you take off too much foliage, they will drop more fruit. And it can also impact the quality. The more leaves they have when they're carrying their fruit, the higher quality the fruit will be and the more they're going to retain.
That makes sense.
So that's the only caution I would say about that. Otherwise, in terms of the health of the tree, they're usually fine if you prune them, even if they're carrying fruit. Yeah.
Would you recommend cleaning up dropped fruit and disposing of it, or is it okay if it's on the ground?
Optimally, you could take that fruit and dispose of it if you've got disease issues. So if you've got a tree that's got a lot of bacterial spot or anthracnose, you might dispose of it. In practice, we don't really do that. And that fruit's just going to compost down and return some nutrition back into the soil. Now, if you've got a tree that's bearing a lot of fruit and you're not harvesting the fruit and it's just rotting and going to waste underneath the tree, that I would highly discourage because that attracts a lot of fruit flies and insect pests and animals and things of that sort. And it also actually puts a good bit of nitrogen back into the soil, which you want to avoid with mangoes, recycling nitrogen through the canopy. So, but like in terms of just the regular drops that they're abscising along the way to maturity, not that big of a deal.
When is a good time to fertilize and when is a good time not to fertilize?
Okay, well, a good time to fertilize. It kind of depends on your goals. If you're trying to grow a young mango tree, okay, it makes sense to give them a balanced NPK fertilizer, let's say between the months of March and November. In the winter, they don't do much growing. They go dormant during that time. Most of the time, we don't apply NPK during the winter unless it's the potted trees that we're trying to grow in our nursery. Now, if it's a bearing tree, you don't give it that fertilizer. You should give it potassium, and you can give that as late as November and again in March or April to influence the fruit. Micronutrients are technically a sort of fertilizer, and you can apply those all year long. And we do. So we'll apply them in December, you know? So that's my answer to that question. If it's a bearing sized tree, it shouldn't be receiving NPK, nitrogen fertilizer, I should say. But if it's a tree you're trying to get to bearing size, then you would want to give that during the warmer months of the year, because it's going to absorb and use that fertilizer a lot more during that time period anyway.
All the trees I bought from you, you know, a year tall, they all flower. Should I take those flowers off?
No, what you should do is let them set. Okay, so the question was, what should you do with a small mango tree that's flowering? Should you just strip the flowers off? No, you should let it set little mangoes and then strip the little mangoes off when they're pea size or so. Why? Because if you let that tree hold on to the fruit, it's going to stunt the tree, right? And a lot of you already know that. But what you don't realize is if you just take the flowers off, a lot of times they will try to flower again, and they will waste energy trying to flower when you want them flush and growth instead. So that's why I suggest you take off the little fruits and let the panicle dry out over the course of a couple of weeks. A lot of times it just falls off.
Yeah, that's what.
But they're a lot less likely to flower a second time if you do that.
That's flowered twice so far.
It already has flowered
in
twice.
January. And
Okay, well that's not uncommon
no,
this
then
year.
it's flowered again.
Okay. Well, you don't want it to flower another time, so just let it set the little mangoes, strip them off, and then I would think that they'll just fall off and you'll get new growth.
Flower.
Yeah.
That is not growing.
Right. Well, you don't want that to happen, and you want to discourage that. So,
if the mangoes got bigger, like about this big, should you still take them off if it's a small tree?
Yes.
Okay, so
yeah, I mean, like, let's imagine that this is a little tree and you forgot to take the fruit off, or you weren't sure what to do. As long as you take it off before maturity,
just take it off.
Yeah, just take it off. Okay. Because it's just going to sap the energy from it and it's going to stunt it. Stunted mango trees don't really grow much, and they're pretty unthrifty and unhealthy a lot of the time. So it pays to be a little patient and give the tree some time to develop some canopy. That might take 2 years in some cases, but that's usually the max. I mean, even the little 1 gallon trees we plant are usually fruiting 2 years or 3 years later at most. So. All right. Any other questions?
When you talk about putting down potassium.
Yeah.
Pure potassium, like potassium nitrate, or
No, I do not recommend using potassium nitrate, but we do use potassium sulfate.
potassium sulfate.
Potassium nitrate will force mango trees to flower at certain tropical latitudes, but it does not work at our latitude at all for that purpose. So I've seen people using it, and it's a terrible idea. Do not give your mango tree potassium nitrate, but potassium sulfate, which contains 0 nitrogen, is beneficial and is a very high percentage of potassium. So usually it's like 0.050, 52, something in that range.
And you apply that dry, or do you mix it up and apply it as a liquid?
You can do either, but we would usually recommend people applying it as a granular. Either it comes in granular form or soluble form, but you can apply the soluble as a granular. I recommend 6 ounces per inch of stem caliper, not to exceed 5 pounds per tree. So if your trunk diameter measured a foot off the ground or so is 2 inches, that would be 12 ounces of potassium sulfate, right? And you're going to spread it underneath the tree, keep it away from the trunk, and you'll do it once in the fall and again in the spring. The fall application is to influence your fruit set and initial retention. The second application is to influence the fruit's quality. So the final quality, that potassium is really going to benefit in terms of the fruit size, in terms of the bricks, the sugar content, the appearance of the fruit. Lots of benefits from potassium, and it's very deficient in our soils a lot of the time here. So
Potassium chloride, okay?
you can use potassium chloride, but it is more likely to burn the tree than the sulfate.
It's more like
That's
acidic.
huh?
It's more acidic.
Well, it's more caustic, so it's more likely to
It's more soluble. It's just gonna.
yeah, it's more likely to cause burn. Trust me. So I would suggest using the sulfate if you can, and it's you can order it online. You can get it from ag supply shops. You can get it from places like Howard Fertilizer or Nutrient Ag Solutions carries it. There's lots of organic certified versions of it. Like we've got one called Organic that we use, and it's pretty good.
What about natural?
Other fruit trees? Do you use it on your sapodillas and your?
Yes, we do. So it's beneficial to your other fruit trees too, not just your mangoes. So
I have found using coconut husk.
what's that?
Coconut husk, like the
Coconut
dry-
husk.
Yes.
What
dry-
about it?
Using it as a fertilizer has helped.
As a
Do I
mulch.
use coconut husk
I
as a
have found- I
fertilizer?
have found it useful.
Okay, it's probably beneficial at least to younger mango trees. I've not used it. So
What about KMAG?
KMAG is definitely beneficial. So if you want to apply it to your mango tree, go ahead and do it. It'll probably help in terms of your final fruit quality and your retention rates and stuff like that. So I don't use KMAG specifically, but it's definitely going to be beneficial for the mango. Yes.
Thank you for sticking it out.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's no other questions, all right, I'll conclude with just a few comments, okay, that were contained in my presentation, which I'll hopefully give some other time, okay? And I have to give a shout out to my wife because she helped put that presentation together, spent quite a bit of time on it. So, final comments. Our industry has, our hobby, okay? The mango industry in Florida has a good bit of challenges facing it, and just some issues. One is the disease issue that I just discussed earlier. Another is we're having more issues with thrip insects causing problems on flowering trees also, and these mild winters as well. So there's things that, as backyard growers, these are just things that you just should be aware of, okay? Besides that, however, there is a lot of people planting mango trees now. The acreage, the commercial acreage in Florida has expanded on a level that it has not expanded in a very long time. So the consumer has a lot to benefit from that. The availability of mangoes is expanding tremendously, both in terms of availability of fruit and availability of different varieties. I would say that trees lag fruit in terms of production, but there's lots of mango farms being planted all over the place. People are planting mangoes in parts of Florida that we never thought possible or likely. So there's going to be increasing competition in terms of producers, but it's great for consumers like yourselves that want to share mangoes with everybody. I have talked in the past to this organization and to other organizations about establishing an independent organization for the promotion of Florida mangoes. And I've spoken with other growers about making this a reality. And this year we plan to finally have an event that is coordinated between myself and other growers. And we're going to hold it here in Palm Beach County. So I hope that a lot of you will hopefully attend and find something like that valuable and maybe even want to participate. But what we want is to see mango culture in Florida thrive. Mangoes are becoming as ubiquitous to Florida as citrus once was. And it should be the fruit that people identify with our state, with how widely it is planted now. But there's so many people in the United States that don't know that not only that there is such a thing as good mangoes, but there is such a thing as a Florida mango. So we would like to promote the Florida mango and someday see Florida mangoes in grocery stores in New Jersey or Chicago or whatever. And we want to see people traveling to Florida to have our mangoes and that kind of thing.
How does that dovetail with the Mango Festival that we do too?
I'm sorry, what?
How does that dovetail with the Mango Festival that is at the Fruit and Spice Park?
Okay, well, there's mango festivals held in Florida. Yes, they've had one at the Spice Park a number of years. They've done the Fairchild one is the big one.
Yeah.
But I feel like if growers were to participate and coordinate, we could put on something really special.
Okay.
They used to hold a organization back in the 30s, 40s, 50s called the Florida Mango Forum. That organization was the engine of promoting Florida mangoes for decades, and they did a great job of it. They used to meet in different growing areas of Florida. They'd have a meeting in Miami, and the next year they'd do it in West Palm Beach or Bradenton or whatever. And it was like a convention, and thousands of people would attend this event. Now, that organization unfortunately went defunct many decades ago, but I would like to see a similar kind of organization hold a convention every year, and I would like to see it done in air conditioning. One of the biggest problems with the Fairchild Festival is it's held outdoors in July in Coral Gables. Does not leave people with a positive experience. But I know that if we work together, we could fill the Palm Beach Convention Center or the Miami-Dade County Convention Center or the fairgrounds or something like that with thousands of people that want to learn about mangoes, experience, interact with mangoes, and just get exposed to them. And an organization like that could promote materials that could be distributed to nurseries and to clubs throughout the state that hold plant sales to inform people's purchasing decisions, promote mango culture in general. And I think it would be a wonderful thing. So I hope that we're able to work towards that. And I'm going to try my best to do something good this year in terms of establishing that. And like I said, I have talked to some other growers, some of whom you'd be familiar with about that. Anyway, so my company is Tropical Acres Farms. If you aren't already familiar with it, we're in the city of West Palm Beach. We have a website that you can access that has a description of every single mango we grow if you want to learn about mangoes. We sell trees, we sell fruit, and we sell scions if you like to graft mangoes or want to graft them, of most of the varieties that we grow, including a lot of rare and obscure stuff. So that's my shameless plug for my company. And that's it. I hope that I can give you a real talk soon. So